The doorbell rang at 9:45 that Wednesday night, marking the beginning of my wife's secret life unraveling, though she didn't know it yet. I opened the door to find a man and a woman standing there, both dressed in business attire that looked slightly outdated and worn. Instantly, I suspected they were with the police. It wasn't just their appearance, it was the timing. This was the week Chase and I had planned to set our payback scheme into motion. "Good evening, sir," the woman said. "Are you Mr. Jason Walker?" "Yeah, I'm Jason Walker." "Who are you, and why are you here at this hour unannounced?" I played dumb, though I had a pretty good idea where this was headed. Behind me, my wife, Kira, called out, "Who is it, honey?" Her voice trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. She'd been on edge all evening. Wiping her hands on a kitchen towel, she joined me at the door. The look on her face said it all. She was worried. "I don't know yet, sweetheart," I replied, forcing myself to sound calm. As she stood beside me, her frown deepened. The woman shifted her attention from me to Kira. "Are you Mrs. Kira Walker?" she asked. The man standing next to her remained silent, looking bored, as if he had somewhere better to be. "Look," I said, attempting to sound annoyed while hiding my anticipation. "You've been asking questions on my front porch without even telling me who you are or why you're here." The woman let out a sigh of resignation. She reached into her shoulder bag while her companion pulled something from the inside pocket of his jacket. In a synchronized motion, they both flashed their badges under the porch light. "I'm Detective Sergeant Hopkins, and this is Detective Curtis," the woman said. "We're investigating an assault that took place earlier today, and we need to ask both you and Mrs. Walker a few questions." I had practiced my look of surprise a few times in front of the mirror. Now was my chance to see if it worked. "An assault? And why would you think my wife or I know anything about it?" I asked, feigning growing irritation. I glanced at Kira, whose face had drained of all color. She looked terrified, almost on the verge of hyperventilating. Finally, the male detective spoke. "The victim sustained serious injuries earlier this afternoon. During a brief moment of consciousness before surgery, he identified Kira Walker as a key witness. Several other witnesses also confirmed her presence at the scene." Still pretending confusion, I asked, "Who was this victim, and why would my wife be involved?" I let my voice trail off, as though I were a clueless husband just starting to piece things together. The ignorant act was working well enough, for now. Detective Hopkins wasted no time. "Mrs. Walker, what is your relationship with a Mr. Noah Carter, and why were you with him when he was attacked in the back parking lot of the Sunset Motel on Westwood Avenue this afternoon?" She didn't hold back, going straight for the shock factor. There was no escape for Kira now. She let out a sob and looked like she was about to faint. I turned slowly toward her, my expression one of confusion and shock. At least, I hoped I was playing my part right. My gaze shifted from surprise to concern and then to anger as she began to cry uncontrollably, backing away from me. Fridays tend to be less chaotic than the rest of the work week, and this one was no different. I was having a relatively calm afternoon when my secretary, Alexis, informed me I had a call on line 1. I picked up the phone. "Mr. Kennedy speaking. This is Deputy Perkins from the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. I need to schedule a meeting with you this afternoon or evening, if possible," said a husky voice on the other end. "Deputy Perkins," I responded, already sensing that Jason had held up his end of the deal. "Can you tell me what this is about?" "I'd prefer to discuss it in person, Mr. Kennedy. I'd also recommend Mrs. Kennedy be there for this conversation. In fact, it's important that she is," he added, rather evasively. I was glad he couldn't see the grin of satisfaction spreading across my face. "I'm confused, but curious," I replied. "Of course you can come by. How about 7 p.m.? My wife works during the day, but she'll be home by the evening." 7 p.m. works. "See you then," he confirmed before hanging up. I put down the phone, stood, and took a deep, contented breath as I looked out the window. Tonight, everything comes to light, I thought. But I realized I couldn't get ahead of myself. I needed to play my role convincingly. I had to call home to give Bella a heads up about the deputy's visit. Otherwise, she might catch on to the setup. The home phone rang 4 times before switching to voicemail. That was unusual. Bella always picked up around this time of day. Maybe she was in the shower, or perhaps she'd run a quick errand. I waited a few minutes, thinking she'd return and see the missed call, but when I tried again 5 minutes later, I got the same result, voicemail. I checked my watch, debating whether to wait longer, but the nagging feeling that something wasn't right kept gnawing at me. After 10 more minutes, I left a message, doing my best to sound puzzled and concerned. "Hey, Bella, it's me. I'll be home around 6:15. I got a strange call from Deputy Perkins. No idea what it's about, but I figured I should let you know we might have a visitor tonight. Just wanted to give you a heads up. See you soon." As I hung up, I couldn't help but smile. The message was perfect, calm, a little worried, like any unsuspecting husband would be. I had nailed the tone, walking that fine line between concern and confusion, hiding the quiet triumph stirring inside me. Everything was moving along as planned. By the time the detectives left, I had already unleashed every bit of fury I had built up inside. I yelled until my throat was sore while Kira crumbled before me, a pathetic heap of guilt and tears. It took every ounce of control. I had to keep my anger in check. The rage still burned beneath my skin, but I knew I had to control it. The detectives stood like statues, silent observers ensuring Kira was safe from anything beyond my fury-filled words. I had given them my carefully rehearsed version of events, a perfect blend of ignorance and shock, making myself look like the betrayed husband caught completely off guard. When they seemed satisfied, I turned away, retreating upstairs. Packing was easy. I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. My suitcase was already waiting, half-filled, needing only the final touches. Clothes, toiletries, laptop, essentials. I threw them in with cold, mechanical precision. But leaving had to be more than just an exit. It had to be a performance. I stomped down the stairs, the weight of my luggage emphasizing my every step, each footfall a deliberate echo through the house. Kira was still curled up on the sofa, her sobs muffled by trembling hands. A pathetic, broken mess. I should have felt something. Remorse, sympathy, even nostalgia for what we once had. But all I felt was contempt. Everything was playing out perfectly. Detectives Hopkins and Curtis had delivered the final blow. They laid out the ugly truth, piece by piece, as Kira dissolved under the weight of her own betrayal. She had been to the Newton Motel twice, to meet Noah Myers. But today's meeting had gone very, very wrong. After leaving their rented room, they had barely reached their cars when a figure appeared from the shadows, a man, masked, waiting. Noah never saw the first strike coming. The baseball bat connected with the side of his ribs, knocking him into the pavement. He barely had time to gasp before the second blow came, snapping his left arm. Another strike shattered his leg. The worst? The attacker saved the most brutal hit for his groin, a deliberate, unforgiving punishment. And Kira? She saw everything. She didn't scream, didn't run. She just stood there, frozen in horror as the attacker rested the bat on his shoulder, tilted his head, and stared at her. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't trying to hide. Then, just as calmly as he had arrived, he turned and disappeared into the shadows of the parking lot. By the time bystanders noticed the bloodied body on the ground, it was too late. Some rushed to help. Others stood at a distance, filming. Eventually, people started noticing Kira too, standing there, pale as death, fingers trembling as she fumbled with her car keys. She barely managed to unlock her car before she scrambled inside and sped away, but the damage was already done. Several phones caught her face. Cameras captured her license plate. And when Noah was rushed to the hospital, his last gasping words before surgery sealed her fate. 2 names, Kira and Bella. I replayed all of this in my head as I walked out of the house for the last time. 4 years together, 1 year of cohabitation, 3 years of a lie disguised as a marriage. It took me 30 minutes to dismantle it. I didn't look back. I had somewhere to be. By Friday afternoon, everything was falling into place. I pulled into my driveway, fresh from my call with Deputy Perkins, expecting to see Bella's car in the garage. Instead, nothing. The space was empty. Perfect. I stepped inside, dropped my gym bag by the door, and headed for the kitchen. The house was quiet, too quiet. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and leaned against the counter, taking a slow sip. My eyes flickered to the wall phone, its red light blinking. My voicemail from earlier hadn't been played back. Or maybe it had been ignored. A smirk tugged at the corner of my lips. I took my time, strolling through the house, letting my fingers trail over the furniture as I made my way upstairs. Once in the bedroom, I peeled off my shirt and tossed it lazily toward the hamper, missing by a mile. But I barely paid attention to that. Because then I saw it. The closet. The space where Bella's clothes should have been empty. I moved to her dresser, opening drawers one by one. Underwear? Gone. Jewelry? Gone. Every little piece of her vanished. I let out a slow breath. Expected? Yes. Still, it made my blood simmer. I scanned the room, taking in what else was missing. Knickknacks, pictures, her favorite books, all gone. A clean break. I let out a dry chuckle, shaking my head as I changed into slacks, a polo, and my moccasins. No socks. Casual, but put together, the perfect look for what came next. By the time I stepped back downstairs, the feeling in the air had shifted. It wasn't just quiet anymore. It was vacant. Hollow. A fitting atmosphere for what was coming next. A sharp knock on the front door signaled his arrival. Right on time. I opened the door to find Deputy Perkins standing on my porch, his uniform crisp, his expression unreadable. He was a broad-shouldered man with tired eyes and a voice like gravel. "Mr. Kennedy," he said, offering a curt nod. "When did you first learn about your wife's affair with Mr. Evan Brewer?" I gave him the look I had perfected in the mirror. Confused. Shocked. Slightly hurt, but mostly bewildered. "Excuse me," I asked, furrowing my brow. "My wife? What are you talking about?" And just like that, the next phase of the plan began. "My wife's what?" I repeated, my voice laced with disbelief. "An affair? Brewer." I blinked, swallowing hard, as if the words had physically struck me. "You mean she's cheating on me? With who?" I exhaled sharply, rubbing my eyes with my fingers I had discreetly coated with Tabasco sauce just before opening the door. By now, my eyes were bloodshot, watering. Perfect. I let my shoulders sag, my voice barely above a whisper. "I guess her lover is this Brewer?" Deputy Perkins gave a slow nod. "No, I had no idea." I sat down heavily, as if my legs had given out. "May I speak to Mrs. Kennedy?" Perkins asked. "Perhaps she can shed some light on our investigation." "Is she here?" "We'll need her statement as well." I shook my head, dazed. She's gone. When I got home, all her things were missing. I think she left me. That's the only explanation I can come up with." It was time to shift gears. My breathing became unsteady, my hands clenched. Just when did the sheriff's office start investigating wives' infidelities? My voice rose with controlled outrage. While their hard-working, trusting husbands are out providing for them. I paced, waving my arms, throwing occasional sharp glares at Perkins, who remained completely unfazed. If anything, he looked bored. "Mr. Kennedy," he said, his tone flat. "We don't investigate infidelity. However, we do investigate when affairs lead to felony assault and battery, or even attempted murder." I stopped pacing. My expression morphed into stunned innocence. "Deputy," I said, shaking my head. "I had no idea my wife was having an affair, and I am certainly not a violent man. When exactly did this assault happen, if I may ask?" He studied me for a moment before answering. "Last night. Motel parking lot on Lone Tree Road. Around 8:30 p.m. Brewer met with your wife at the bar attached to the motel. Witnesses said they had 2 drinks together, both looking agitated. Your wife left first. Brewer followed shortly after. That's when a man in a black ski mask attacked him with a baseball bat." I stiffened slightly at the mention of the bat, but quickly masked it. Perkins continued. "The witness said the attacker struck him across the back first. After Brewer went down, the assailant kept going, targeting his ribs, his arms. And then, Perkins paused deliberately. He focused on the groin. The silence stretched. My jaw tightened, but I controlled my reaction. "It's been our experience, Mr. Kennedy," Perkins added, "that this type of attack usually suggests a husband taking revenge on his wife's lover." I exhaled slowly. "Deputy," I said, rubbing my face. "I'm still trying to process all of this. My wife leaving me now this." Perkins nodded, eyes locked on me. "I can assure you," I continued, "I had nothing to do with this. The only connection I have is my wife's involvement with Brewer. But last night, I was at my office. My office manager, Alexis Jenkins, was with me. We were working on our business tax filings until almost 10 p.m. She can confirm that." Perkins gave a slow nod. "Yeah, I already spoke with her after you left your office this afternoon. She confirmed your alibi." I narrowed my eyes. Then what the hell was all of this? I gestured between us, asking me questions, implying I was involved. "Whoa, Mr. Kennedy," Perkins said, stepping back slightly. "We have to cover all bases. In situations like these, The aggrieved husband is usually our primary suspect, until we can confirm otherwise. And now you've confirmed otherwise? I pressed. Perkins shrugged. Let's just say we're exploring other leads. His tone was vague, calculated, still probing. I let my expression harden. If you have further suspicions and want to question me again, you can go through my lawyer. Perkins raised his hands. Relax, Mr. Kennedy. I don't think we'll need to go that route. He reached into his pocket and handed me a card. By the way, if Mrs. Kennedy contacts you, tell her to get in touch with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office. And of course, notify me as well. He paused, then added, That's all for tonight. He turned to leave. I closed my fingers around his card, expression unreadable. Your wife and how you found out. His words felt rehearsed, almost mechanical. He tipped his Stetson and turned toward the door. As I moved to close it behind him, he paused. Remember, Mr. Kennedy, if you hear from her, we'd really like to speak with Mrs. Kennedy. I gave a silent nod. Finally, he left. I shut the door and exhaled slowly. Relief washed over me, deeper than I expected. Instead of heading to the kitchen for a beer, I went straight to the dining room, pulled open the cabinet, and grabbed the bottle of wild turkey. Pouring myself a generous glass, I took a slow sip, savoring the burn. Jason had come through for me, just as I had for him. Raising my glass to the empty room, I muttered, Sayonara, Bella. The Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition didn't quite fit the vibe of a high-powered divorce lawyer's office, but hey, I was a guy, and I liked to look. Flipping through the pages absent-mindedly, I barely noticed the reception area around me. I had already checked in at Logan Armstrong's office. One of the most feared divorce attorneys in Cherokee County, Logan had built a reputation for ruthlessly advocating for her clients, especially scorned husbands. The word was, she had a particular disdain for cheating wives. Her name alone sent shivers through attorneys, judges, even the occasional law enforcement officer. A week had passed since Bella's affair and disappearance. Time to take the next step. The moment I got home that night, I'd called Logan's office and secured an appointment. Her staff had emailed me a checklist: close joint accounts, cancel credit cards, divide savings, change beneficiaries. The ugly financial side of divorce. I had done it all. Well, almost. One last conversation with Jason remained. That was already arranged. I glanced at my watch. I had arrived half an hour early, deliberate. Jason and I had a little dance of our own to play. The door opened. Someone approached the receptionist. Excuse me, said a male voice. One I knew instantly. I kept my head down, pretending not to recognize him. Of course, sir. The receptionist responded smoothly. How did you hear about Ms. Armstrong? She proceeded with her scripted intake, subtly measuring the effectiveness of the office's marketing. Jason answered her questions, his tone subdued. Please fill out these forms, she said eventually. Ms. Armstrong is booked today and tomorrow, but we'll try to get you in by Friday. Jason hesitated. Oh, okay. Do you have a restroom I could use? Certainly. Out the door to your left, in the main hallway. That was my cue. I waited 20 seconds, then stood. I'll just need to use the restroom myself before my appointment, I told the receptionist with a polite smile. She nodded as I stepped out. Inside the men's room, Jason was at the sink, drying his hands. I checked the stall to make sure we were alone. You all right? I asked quietly. Jason met my gaze, his expression unreadable. Then, with a strange smile, he muttered, Yeah, I'm okay. It's just, I never knew I had that much anger inside me. The way I did what I did last week. I've never hurt anyone like that before. His voice was low, almost distant. He looked away for a moment, then turned back. It scares me, man. It really does. I nodded. Yeah, I know. But I needed Jason focused. We now have a legitimate reason for knowing each other, I reminded him. Meeting at a divorce lawyer's office makes sense. Can you keep it together? He exhaled sharply, steadying himself. Yeah, I can do it. I gave him a reassuring grin. Remember, your situation is different from mine, and we both know it. I paused. When you get to that third page of the questionnaire, the one about counseling and reconciliation, you know what to do. 6 months later. Jason, I wasn't one to hang around bars, but tonight was an exception. 6 months. 6 months since Chase and I had embarked on this little venture together. The one that let us reclaim some pride. Back then, I had no clue what was happening in my life. A stable job, a beautiful wife. No reason to suspect anything was wrong. Then Chase showed up, asking me to meet him after work. He had something I needed to hear. I hesitated, but he offered to buy drinks and dinner, so I figured it was worth my time. That night changed everything. She drugged her, Jason. Chase had said over and over. You have to remember that. She didn't set out to cheat on you. Then he laid out the evidence, the PI reports, surveillance photos, transcripts. I had been blind. His wife, Bella, had led the investigation. But somehow, it uncovered mine too. Kira, my wife. I hadn't even known Kira was friends with Bella. But apparently, their work lunches had turned into after-work drinks. And when Kira started staying out late to wind down, she had been doing it with Bella. According to the PI's report, Kira was shocked when Bella first mentioned her affair. But instead of disgust, she was intrigued. And that's when everything fell apart. Kira had been reading romance novels since she was a teenager, so Bella's reckless behavior must have felt like some kind of real-life drama. Kira, of course, would never cheat, or at least, that's what I had always believed. But she had loved hearing about Bella's adventures, promising to keep her secrets. The tipping point came when Bella invited two men to join them at the bar. Kira had wanted to refuse, but Bella welcomed them with open arms. Feeling uncomfortable, Kira left early. But Bella? Bella took the men to a motel. The next week, the same men showed up again, Noah Myers and Evan Brewer. Kira stayed longer this time. And while she and Bella were in the restroom, Myers slipped something into Kira's drink. When she came back, her coordination was off, her responses sluggish. Myers and Brewer played the concerned gentleman, offering to help her lie down and recover. They took her to a motel room next door. Chase had drilled it into my head. He drugged her. I believed him. But what ate at me was what came next. She didn't need to go back to him a second time. But she did. She let him blackmail her. And worst of all, she didn't trust me enough to tell me what was going on. Instead, she let it fester, dragging herself deeper into a mess she couldn't escape. I took a long sip of my drink, trying to drown out the anger still simmering inside me. It's not just that she cheated, I muttered. It's that she didn't trust me enough to come to me for help. I'm her husband. It's my job to protect her. What kind of man am I if my own wife can't trust me to take care of her? Chase and I sat in silence for a moment, staring into our glasses. So, are you and Kira still trying to work things out? Chase finally asked, swirling his wild turkey. Yeah, we are, I admitted, taking another pull on my beer. I'm still pissed, but it's getting better. She's in assault trauma counseling. We've been going to couples therapy for about 10 weeks now. Chase nodded. You know, Bella was deep into it with those guys. She probably suggested drugging Kira in the first place. Yeah, I know. We've gone over it. I sighed, then asked, have you heard from Bella? Chase shook his head. Nah, it's like she disappeared. I figure she'll resurface when her money runs out. Maybe I'll hear from her or her lawyer. Doesn't matter. Logan Armstrong already has the divorce paperwork ready. I can change the grounds from adultery to irreconcilable differences or abandonment if she stays gone long enough. Either way, I'm fine. He wasn't fine. I could see it. Chase was still holding on to a lot of anger. But underneath that, he still had feelings for Bella, whether he wanted to admit it or not. Counseling had taught me that much. Anger that deep only came from someone who still cared. I raised my glass. Here's to 6 months of getting our lives back. Chase clinked his glass against mine. And to whatever comes next. Well, I said with a grin, at least you got the formal separation paperwork in. You're legally free to lower your wife count without getting slapped with a countersuit for adultery. Chase smirked. You got that right. He took another sip and stared off into space for a few seconds. Then he turned back to me with a smirk. So, you and Kira finally back to doing, the deed? I just smiled and nodded. I wasn't about to get into details, but yeah, we were back at it. It had taken a couple of months after everything came out, and only after she had been in counseling for a while. But man, the changes. Kira was practically bending over backward in her guilt-ridden efforts to make it up to me. Anything I wanted. Anytime I wanted. Turns out that bastard Myers had been the first to take that hill, so to speak. But I was making the most of it now. A movement behind us and the sound of a throat clearing pulled our attention away from the bar. A woman stood there, wearing a dark green cocktail dress that left little to the imagination, ample cleavage, a high slit that revealed toned thighs. Chase and I both stared, momentarily speechless. What's that British term? Sex on legs. So, she said with a smirk. You two know each other, I see. Something clicked. A flash of recognition. Then it hit me. Sergeant Hopkins, I said, blinking. As I live and breathe. Wow, I didn't expect a policewoman to look this good off-duty. She chuckled. Actually, it's Lieutenant Hopkins now. But that's just my professional name. When I'm out with my husband, I'm simply Mrs. Perkins. A well-built man in a sharp suit joined her. I didn't recognize him, but Chase stiffened beside me. Hello, Mr. Kennedy, the man said, his eyes narrowing slightly. I see my wife introduced herself to you. Then he turned to me, offering his hand. Todd Perkins. I shook his hand. His grip was firm, but not aggressive. Chase cleared his throat. Jason, this is Deputy Sheriff Perkins, the one I was telling you about. The guy who investigated the case with my soon-to-be ex-wife a few months back. I raised an eyebrow, but kept quiet. And I handled the investigation for the Woodstock PD involving Mr. Palmer and his wife during that same time. Lieutenant Hopkins, Mrs. Perkins, added with an amused smile. She glanced between Chase and me, waiting for an explanation. Chase spoke first. Jason and I met at my divorce lawyer's office when we found out our wives knew each other and were involved with the same guys. We stayed in touch. Now we meet up to share our misery. I took over. Except, well, Chase's wife disappeared. My wife and I are trying to patch things up. Lieutenant Hopkins' smile thinned. Well, Mr. Palmer, I'm glad to hear you and your wife are trying to work it out. By the way, we still have an open case on the attack on Mr. Myers. She paused, watching for a reaction. I just grimaced and took a slow pull from my beer. He's still in rehab for his leg, she continued. Looks like he'll have a limp for the rest of his life. His arm is recovering well, though. Good thing he's right-handed. I couldn't care less about Myers' recovery. His wife, Bella, divorced him, she added. Took their 2 kids and a good chunk of his finances. Oh, and it seems his reproductive organs, while still functional, are lacking potency. Low sperm motility. He probably won't have any more kids if he remarries. There was an edge of satisfaction in her voice. I guess even cops enjoyed seeing cheating men get what they deserved. Yeah, Deputy Perkins added. And Chase, if you ever hear from your ex, let her know we're still looking into the attack on Mr. Brewer. His injuries weren't as bad as Myers, but he's got plenty of medical bills. Just as his wife Riley hit him with divorce papers, too. Chase grunted. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. The deputy and his wife exchanged amused glances. Well, you'll have a good night, Perkins said, taking his wife's hand and leading her toward the door. Chase and I turned back to the bar. For a few minutes, we just sat there in silence. Then, in a low voice, Chase asked, You did make sure to get rid of that bat, right? I smirked.